7,300 mAh battery, 165Hz display, 120 watts charging. That looks absolutely incredible on the OnePlus 15 spec sheet. But after some months with this Galaxy and this Pixel, we can tell you there are some things these two do so much better, and OnePlus doesn't want you to know that. I'm Olive, your host here at Versus.com, and we're going to show you why OnePlus might have finally settled. Before we get started with our testing results, let's talk looks. As you can see, the Pixel 10 Pro XL and the OnePlus 15 share a very similar design language. I mean, even the camera housing looks kind of familiar. The Galaxy S26 Ultra is boxier, and because of that, it can feel more clunky to hold for long periods of time. But to be fair, it does pack the S Pen, which neither of these other two support. On the flip side though, the Pixel has Pixel Snap, which is completely missing from these other two. The Galaxy and the Pixel both stick with aluminium frames, but OnePlus does things differently, at least if you get this Sandstorm colorway. It features an oxidized ceramic frame that gives the phone a super grippy texture and is supposedly even more durable than titanium. The back panel is unique too, utilizing fiberglass, while these other two carry Gorilla Glass Victus 2. It's probably due to the magnets that the Pixel is the heaviest of the three, which is wild because it isn't even packing the biggest battery here. But we'll take a closer look into that when we show you our battery drain test. As for protection, IP68 on the Galaxy and the Pixel is perfectly fine, but this OnePlus 15 steps it up to IP69K, meaning it can even survive a dishwasher ride. Now you might be thinking, wow, that OnePlus sounds incredible. Well, let us show you the displays, because that's where OnePlus's strategy starts to fall apart. Panel sizes across all three are very similar, and they are all LTPO. The OnePlus panel, however, pushes a 165Hz refresh rate instead of 120. That does sound amazing, but it doesn't mean it's the superior screen. For example, in our typical brightness test, the OnePlus clocked the lowest nits, whereas the Pixel was the brightest of the bunch. Once we tested peak brightness, the OnePlus barely budged, while the Pixel climbed even more, and the Galaxy jumped to nearly 4,000 nits. Speaking of the Galaxy, as you might already know, it doesn't just come with an anti-reflective coating. It also features a privacy display to block nosy people from peeking at your cringy TikToks. However, screen brightness takes a hit with this feature turned on, but at least we think it's a fair trade-off for privacy. Under all three of these displays, we also get ultrasonic fingerprint scanners, and we have no issues to report here. You can pause the video right here for all the display specs. So looking at the big picture, the Galaxy takes the crown for the absolute best display of the three. The Pixel is a close runner-up, but the OnePlus is a massive letdown. This 165Hz refresh rate can only be unlocked in a very handful of apps and games. And to top it off, it has the lowest resolution of the three. Its only major win is Dolby Vision support, but we haven't met a single person who considers that a deal breaker. What can be a deal breaker, though, are the cameras, and Samsung and OnePlus pulled a disappointing move with these flagships. For the main cameras, Samsung and Google still pack the same sensors as their last generations, 250 megapixels respectively. But OnePlus somehow thought it was a brilliant idea to downgrade the 50 megapixel primary sensor. Now, to be completely fair, the processing is actually better than what we saw on the OnePlus 13, but they should just have left the hardware alone. And they didn't just mess with the primary lens, they went ahead and downgraded the 50 megapixel ultrawide too, though it still fares pretty well against the Galaxy's 50 megapixel and the Pixel's 48 megapixel ultrawides. For zoom, yup, we have another downgrade on the OnePlus, which sports a slightly weaker 50 megapixel telephoto. The Galaxy also carries a smaller sensor on the 10 megapixel 3x zoom lens, but to counter that, Samsung swapped out the 5x zoom lens for an ALOP telephoto lens with a wider aperture. The Pixel once again faces no changes, still sporting a 48 megapixel zoom lens. Having said that, it doesn't take any steps forward either. As you can see, Google's portrait mode is still a bit rough, and we still cannot use its telephoto lens for this kind of shot. But shifting over to video, the Galaxy has made some massive improvements. Honestly, in a few scenarios, it looks just as clean as an iPhone. This Galaxy, along with the OnePlus, can natively shoot at 8K 30fps, whereas the Pixel caps out at 4K 60fps. Yes, you can technically use Video Boost to get 8K video on this one, but it relies on cloud processing, and it's not immediate. With these same lenses, you can also film video with with a blurred background. Just keep in mind that the maximum quality drops down to 4K 30 FPS on the Galaxy and the OnePlus and completely plummets to 1080p 24 FPS on the Pixel. As for ultra-wide video, we noticed this lens shake happening on the OnePlus. This is something that we have seen on previous OnePlus phones, so it's pretty disappointing that they still haven't figured out a permanent fix and are still shipping phones like this. For maximum ultra-wide video resolutions, the Galaxy can still shoot at 8K 30 FPS while the Pixel and the OnePlus go to 4K 60 FPS. But before we check out the performance where one of these three almost burned our hands, let's take a very quick look at the selfie cameras. Thankfully, we have zero downgrades on this front, with every brand keeping the exact same sensors as on the last generations. That's 12 megapixels on the Galaxy, 42 on the Pixel, and 32 megapixels on the OnePlus. For selfie video, all three can record it up to 4K 60 FPS. The best part here is that OnePlus finally included autofocus on the front camera, though as you can see, the dynamic range is still very wonky.
So now let's test out the audio on all of these devices. We'll start off over here with the Galaxy. What do you guys think? How do I sound? Then we're moving on to the Pixel. Does this sound any better than the Galaxy? What do we think? And then finally we have the OnePlus. I mean, quite a busy area. How is it handling that? But as always, let's talk about it.
Unfortunately, the OnePlus's audio falls short too. You can hear a ton of digital artifacts while the other two sound way cleaner. So looking at these side by side, the downgraded camera sensors aren't completely ruining the experience. But that shouldn't be an excuse for multi-billion-dollar giants to cheap out on hardware. We're gonna let you pick a favorite in terms of cameras, so definitely drop your favorite in the comments below to see which one of these has the most fans. In the meantime, let's move into the literal heat of the action, because one of these devices almost started a small fire here in our office. Here we have two contenders rocking Snapdragon's best chipset, while the Pixel goes with Google's Silicon. Our Galaxy packs 12 gigs of RAM compared to 16 on the other two. You can dive into the rest of the performance specs right here. But numbers never tell the full story, so of course we put these through some heavy real-world testing for you guys. First up on the block was Grid Legends in graphics mode, and as you can see, the Pixel's chipset can't run this game at all. The other two ran it flawlessly, and the developers even unlocked a 40 FPS ceiling for the Galaxy. As for thermal performance, it was pretty much neck and neck. Thankfully, all three devices can run Wuthering Waves, but the Pixel still dropped the most frames with all the graphical settings maxed out. On top of that, it ran the hottest of the bunch. But funnily enough, this wasn't the phone that almost burned our studio down. Shifting gears to productivity apps, we exported 99 photos in Adobe Lightroom. And here, both the Galaxy and the OnePlus finished within seconds of each other, while the Pixel took its sweet time. As for video rendering, we threw a 1-minute 4K project at 30 FPS into CapCut. This time around, while all managed to finish in under a minute, the final standings are very similar to our Lightroom speed test. But let's dive into some benchmarks. Despite the Galaxy's Snapdragon variant running 2 overclocked prime cores, the OnePlus still managed to give us a much higher score in Geekbench 6 for both single and multi-core performance. The Pixel, well, it was just hanging out in the backseat. Now, it's because of 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme stress test that we discovered one of these phones is a pyromaniac. Because despite the OnePlus delivering better sustained performance than even the overclocked Galaxy, it got dangerously hot. It actually crashed a few times before it could even finish the full 20-minute test due to overheating. We registered peak surface temperatures of up to 134 degrees Fahrenheit, and let me tell you, your skin is not going to enjoy that. Thankfully, things were more reasonable in Antutu, where once again we got the highest numbers out of the OnePlus, with the Galaxy following closely behind. The Pixel lagged so far back, it felt like it wasn't even trying. Wrapping up with storage speeds using the CPDT benchmark, both the Galaxy and the OnePlus performed very similarly, though the Galaxy still held a slight edge over the OnePlus. Alright, so long story short, even though this Galaxy ships with a tweaked processor, OnePlus still squeezes more power out of the same chipset. But as you just saw, that power might be the reason you end up with third-degree burns or your desk catches fire. But that's not the only test where we got a bittersweet surprise from this OnePlus, because we encountered some weird issues with the battery. As As you probably know, the OnePlus 15 packs a massive battery, plus also supports the fastest charging speeds. But there's a big issue with it. If you get one in the States, wired charging is going to be capped at 80 watts due to local power grid limitations, whereas the international version tops out at 120 watts. And this is the version we have. But let's see if that massive capacity translates into a longer runtime out in the real world. So here's how our drain test goes. We calibrated all screens to 500 nits, turned off all battery-saving features, and ran our 9-app loop, which includes social media scrolling, 4K video recording, web browsing, navigation, gaming, video and music streaming, plus video calling. The very first one to run out of gas was the Pixel at 8 hours and 45 minutes. The Galaxy managed to survive for an hour and a half longer than that, but the OnePlus was indeed the ultimate survivor, lasting an incredible 12 hours and 37 minutes. But things got messy when we tried charging them back up. Both the Galaxy and the Pixel can reach their peak charging speeds using any power delivery brick. The OnePlus, on the other hand, requires its proprietary 120-watt charger to hit the maximum top speed. The thing is, both the Galaxy and the OnePlus took the exact same amount of time to reach a full charge, while the Pixel lagged behind at almost an hour and a half. This is really strange given our OnePlus maxed out at only 57 watts, and this with all the relevant settings turned on, plus being plugged with the official 120 watts charging brick and red cable. If any of you have some insight into why this might be happening, please drop a comment and let us know. And that brings us straight into the software experience, and you guys might not agree with us, but we have a big deal breaker here. Out of these three, only the Pixel already got Android 17, while the other two are still in the waiting room. What's wild is that OnePlus will happily charge you a whole bunch of money, but they will only give you 4 years of OS updates. How does that translate in the long run? Well, for some of you, changing phones every 2 or 3 years, it won't be a deal breaker, but it is still very unacceptable given Samsung and Google are willing to support these phones for 7 years. As for the software experience, right this second, we dare to say that the Pixel experience takes the win. Beyond always being first in line for Android releases, you get quarterly Pixel feature drops, which bring new capabilities without having to wait for a full Android version, like you have to do with the Galaxy or the OnePlus. Plus, we just love this colorful Material 3 expressive design language and these small but useful features like Now Playing. We know some of you might be getting your pitchforks ready, but One UI can sometimes feel a bit too cluttered, and Oxygen OS has become a boring iOS clone. But hey, different strokes for different folks. The good news is that you will still find features like Circle to Search and Gemini in either phone. But of course, the absolute most important detail when choosing a phone is the price tag. But before we drop those numbers on you, you have to hear these speakers because the Pixel is actually not doing bad here.
Better move out the way, cause I'm coming with harder hits. My head is as hard as a brick, but I'm harder than all it is. You better move, you might get knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out.
So looking at the big picture, the OnePlus 15 is not a bad phone at all. And you know what makes it even more appealing? Its $899 starting price. But you know what makes it even better? The $799 discount price you can occasionally find on their website, making it the best value pick among these three. Yes, it's definitely not perfect, but outside of that compromised software experience, it is still a better value than the Pixel, even when you consider the $884 discount price you can sometimes find for this one. That said, you can also find the Galaxy S26 Ultra for around $919 nowadays, which makes it a no-brainer if you want the best overall device money can buy. It's true that it's still $120 more than the OnePlus, which you could use to buy 16 pounds of brownies at Walmart, but we think it's worth that extra cash. But what do you guys think? Is the complete package of the Samsung more your style, maybe the raw power of the OnePlus, or do you prefer the smooth software on the Pixel? Let us know in the comments. Also, in case you want exclusive access to videos and perks, go ahead and press that join button. Here's a very special shout out to our latest Ultra members, Marcin, MM, and Iberg. Oh, and before you go watch Toy Story 5, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and hit subscribe because we're always testing the latest tech to help you make the best choice. We'll see you in our next video, and until then, take care.